All right. So the next segment that we're about to start is on the Silicon Valley's next decade. And I'm going to very quickly, we actually provided you with a blog post as related reading for this discussion. But let me quickly take you through the concept so that we can have then again open up public chat and have a meaningful discussion. So the book that I want to point you to kind of get your arms around the initial thoughts on this is Michael Detouz's Unfinished Revolution in Human-Centric Computing. Michael Detouz's was the head of Laboratory for Computer Science, where I did my graduate work at MIT. And Detouz's passed away right around the time that he finished writing this book. And it basically talks about how computing is moving to a stage where it's really solving humanity's problems. And it has immense potential to do that on a very, very large scale. So examples of human-centric computing would be Kiva, for instance. It's a crowdsourced microfinance exchange. I've recently learned about a company called SamaSource. It's a small company. It has actually reached $1 million, but it's a relatively small company. It does crowdsourced digital task exchange for remote digital workers. So they get work from the Googles and the variety of companies that have a lot of digital tasks, and they give it to digital workers in Africa, in rural India, in various places where digital workers in remote places are looking to make a living. Odesk is a very good example of crowdsourced freelance workers marketplace that has been that has seen great penetration in a lot of underserved geographies like Indonesia, Malaysia, Kenya. We actually on 1 million by 1 million, we have people working from Malaysia, from Indonesia, from Kenya, and these are people whom we have got to know through Odesk. eHarmony is a good example. It's actually, eHarmony was not founded by a geek. It was founded by, I think, a doctor of some sort. It brought to online matchmaking a lot of sociology, understanding of sociology and psychology. And it solves a human issue, basically. eBay, again, eBay was not something it was not really a technology. It used technology, but what it was really was a social product, right? It was a social marketplace where people could buy and sell products. Facebook, of course, is the quintessential ultimate social network. It is definitely completely human-centric. LinkedIn is a professional network. Again, we are seeing ideas like these that are now operating at scale. Facebook, LinkedIn, eBay, many of these are now operating at scale. And the big potential is by 2020, 5 billion people are going to be on the internet. So the potential of these kinds of, scalable human-centric solutions are huge. Now, to identify human-centric computing opportunities, you need to understand sociology and human behavior, needs, instincts, and that's not technology. Technology at this point, these platforms or these products are not that difficult to build from a technology point of view. But the success of these solutions is more in the domain of sociology. And this is not the comfort zone of geeks. Zuckerberg's miracle is an exception, I would say. He is a geek. But largely, these solutions don't necessarily come out of the heads of the geeks. So there needs to be an intermingling of, geeks and liberal arts types, people who understand sociology, people who understand human behavior better and have more insights into human behavior. So that's a social engineering that is going to create the maximum innovation for this new decade. And I want to draw your attention also to a couple of other analogies. One thesis I have is that I think this kind of innovation is best brought to market by people who have a Renaissance mind. What is a Renaissance mind? A mind that can assimilate ideas, right-brained and left-brained ideas, ideas from science and technology, assimilate them with ideas from arts, architecture, music, all the liberal arts types of ideas. And Steve Jobs is a very good example of this kind of a mind. Steve Jobs actually has an incredible sense of design, art, architecture, and music. My husband used to work for Steve Jobs. He ran Next Computer for Steve Jobs. So it was, he knows him quite well. We have a lot of insights into his psychology because of that relationship. And it's no accident that Steve Jobs is the guy and Apple is the company that comes up with the iPod, iPhone, iPhone, the huge emphasis on design and user interface. That is what made it such a mass phenomenon. And it set the tone for everything else. Similarly, iPad and what he's doing now with iCloud, this whole evolution of the Apple line of products is a product of a Renaissance mind. So this is something that we need to do some social engineering on. And I kind of want to remind you of Florence under the Medicis, especially Lorenzo Medici, which saw an incredibly powerful era of innovation, both in the sciences and in the arts. Leonardo da Vinci was working at that time. Botticelli, Michelangelo, all these great artists were working at that time. And the truth is, the Medici family, Lorenzo in particular, patronized all these artists and innovators and gave them platforms to work from. So that is something that we need to remember. And in the social engineering that happens, and not only in Silicon Valley, by the way, this needs to happen everywhere in the world. Whoever wants to do innovation in a powerful way today, leveraging today's current environment, it is no longer just math and sciences. There's a huge clamoring in the US for math and sciences right now. I actually think the combination of math and sciences and liberal arts is the right combination for the era in which we are operating right now. So we are in the quest, the innovation quest today is, I think, for this Renaissance mind. Some of the frameworks of this social engineering that helped these Renaissance movements happen, Florence under the Medicis, another movement, another time like that was the Enlightenment period in Paris. There was a similar movement in Bengal, in Calcutta, where I'm from, in the late 1900s and early 20th century. It's called the Bengal Renaissance, when Tagore and a variety of other people were operating in Bengal, and it fueled a lot of the cultural revolution, which also created a big part of the nationalist movement, which ended in India's independence. So what was going on too? I mean, I've kind of studied this and I'm synthesizing it for you. You should go read up more on it. But two things stand out for me. One is the notion of the Renaissance patrons. People were actually inviting artists to come and stay in their estates and, houses or whatever, palaces in the Medici's cases. And so there was patronage of art and architecture and music. And then there were these Renaissance salons where discussions were held. In Paris, there were these saloniers, these high society women who were bringing together philosophers, artists, literary leaders, geniuses, thinkers, to interact, to intermingle. And that intermingling created vibrant artistic collaborations and artistic innovation and social innovation. So my thesis for the next decade is Silicon Valley needs to become a more multidimensional place to spur the next renaissance and the next level of innovation, and by extension, any any geography that is trying to become an innovation hub needs to kind of spur this thinking, this intermingling between the sciences and the arts. So this is the premise of the discussion that I wanted to have with you today. If you could now open up your group chat and comment on the topic. Let's just have an open discussion. You can cut the video and blow up your group chat to fill up your screen to make this easier. Let's see. Ruchika says, would Ashton Kutcher be a patron for today, seeing that he's investing in current startups? Potentially. Jeffrey's saying, Sramana, I think you're spot on, and I'm thinking along the same lines. Just had this discussion with my wife and friends while we were traveling. Jeffrey, where are you based, location-wise? Kansas City, okay. Awesome. Any other comments? Anybody else wants to share your thoughts or ideas on how this can be spurred? By the way, if you're interested in the topic, there's a good discussion going on my blog on the topic, and one lady who used to live in Silicon Valley and has moved since, I can't remember where she's moved to, had a very long response to this, and she says that in today's model, it should not be patrons, it should be investors, and they need to be commercial ventures around art, architecture, whatever it is, needs to be commercial ventures, which I think is an interesting point, because the commercial market today is so much more mature than what it used to be in the early 20th century or in the Renaissance period. Today, I think we actually can craft business models that spur this kind of innovation and help, artists work in financially viable ways, or entertainment industries and entertainment businesses come up. If you look at the piece that I wrote in the blog, I actually gave some visioning scenarios of what I would like to see Silicon Valley look like. Like, I want to see, interesting, creative, innovative architecture. I want to see interesting, creative restaurants. I want to see, jazz clubs, dance clubs, art galleries, all of these things that are financially viable, but also interesting venues for things to happen, an exchange to happen. Raj is saying another way to put it is that behavioral economics will drive the next decade, isn't it? Is it only behavioral economics? I think, yeah, it's sociology for sure. There's behavior in it, but it's more than that. I think it's more than that. I think you need to really understand. You need to have insights into human behavior as it pertains to different contexts. If you go look at my Web 3.0 model, the Web 3.0 framework, which we discuss at length here, Web 3.0 equal to 4C plus P plus VS, the 4 C's being context, community, commerce, and content. P is personalization, VS is vertical search. And if you apply that model to all these domains of culture, whether it's microfinance or whether it's the domain of, knitting, for instance, or the domain of embroidery, or the domain of jazz music, or the domain of watercolor painting, all of those domains would kind of react to that formula, the Web 3.0 formula, and give you ideas. And you need to have insights into human behaviors to really tap into those ideas. Jeffrey is right. I think he's saying, I think it is more than economics. Commercial is great and needed, but we need cultural shifts that support creation, failure, exploration from both the humanistic and tech perspectives. John says, agree completely. Too much tech focus leads to cool stuff that doesn't really solve a problem. Seems like a good chance to combine online and live social networks to build a large cohort. Yes, and actually, that's why you will see there's a lot of very incremental, inconsequential stuff coming out of the geeks right now. I mean, it's easy to tinker. It's become, orders of magnitude easier to tinker, but they're not really coming with the insights that would help them tap into something significant. And I agree with John. He says the live in-person interchange seems important to foster, but it does require the patrons. Yes, I agree with you very much. And I've come to the same conclusion, is that you need these venues where people can come together and meet other interesting people, other multidimensional people. Ken, thank you for providing the Web 3.0 articles. Anybody else? Yes, that's correct. And especially the reason I have a beef with Silicon Valley on this is the Silicon Valley patrons, the Silicon Valley elites, or the Silicon Valley wealthy are very inadequate patrons on the art side. And they're much more excited about climate change and space travel and, all sorts of somewhat geeky things. And they're not really all that interested on the art side. And that's really a gap we have here. Potentially, I think that's a very good idea, John. Does something along the lines of Foursquare plus Kiva provide a way to build a patron group? This is a good idea. I like that idea. I think it's a very good idea. You may want to think about it, actually. John, what are you working on right now? Are you looking for an idea to tap into? This is actually a very decent idea to start validating. There's a bunch of stuff going on, by the way, where these crowdsourced funding for arts projects and stuff are starting to find some traction. There are some efforts along those lines, but I think specifically focusing on patrons who are thinking along the lines that I presented today, I think trying to bring people like that together would be enormously powerful. Anybody else? Any other thoughts? Okay. Well, if you're knee deep in a different product service idea and it looks powerful, then you shouldn't distract yourself. But if you're still in the market for an idea, you may want to check this one out. Any other thoughts, questions, comments? If not, I'm going to start wrapping up the session. Thank you, Jeffrey. Thanks. I'm glad you could join. And yes, Ruchika. Go ahead. Jerry says the prevailing worldview today is to specialize in a particular. What you're proposing is more of synergistic worldview. This would require both intellectual, philosophical, and business mindset. You have said it exactly right, Jerry. One of the pieces that people don't pay enough attention to is philosophy. Philosophy is a much higher order science than anything else that we deal with in our day-to-day life. And if you're interested in philosophy, you may want to look up the discussion on my blog on Capitalism 2.0, where I actually started kind of drawing in some of the conflicts in the philosophical premise of Capitalism 2.0, and I used a lot of Ayn Rand's work to show some of the conflicts. And Ayn Rand is by no means perfect. Her work is quite dated at this point, and as we have seen in the financial meltdown with Greenspan following this, mindless deregulation. It has got us into a lot of trouble. But a lot of her fundamental philosophical ideas are actually still true and still very authentic, very, very sound. There are others that need to be explored and morphed, but yes, I think the domain of philosophy needs to come into play here in defining social models and philosophical models that people feel good about, that have, justice, fairness, ethics. These are components of a sound philosophical model, and they have to come into play in whatever systems we build today. Ruchika asks, what are your thoughts on how do geeks go about finding the sociology factor? Do you think it's time to look for startups, co-founders, or business people who may be from liberal arts? Yes. In fact, if you look at eBay, Jeff Skoll, I believe Jeff Skoll Pierre Omidyar was a geek, but Jeff Skoll is not a geek. In fact, if you look at what Jeff Skoll does today, he actually funds films. He funds some very, very good films. He's funded Good Night and Good Luck that George Clooney produced, I think, and a variety of other films that take on important social issues and important intellectually challenging movies. He's definitely not a geek. He's very much a Renaissance mind, I would say. So I think we have two choices. Either we look for people who can assimilate ideas from multiple disciplines and have both artistic background and philosophical background and technology background. That's more the Steve Jobs style of thinking. Or we bring together people from different disciplines and get them to work together and find intersection points and find exchange of ideas and see where that goes. So I think some of each. We need both. Jeffrey says, objectivism, like all philosophies, have issues, but they provide a great reference from which to evolve further. I agree with that. And Jerry, where are you located? I know where Ken is located. Boston. Okay, cool. Very good. So this is a very nice discussion. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And please feel free to continue the discussion on the blog. The blog post is available, and it's actually, I have circulated that blog post to a lot of my friends and contacts in the artistic community as well. So that conversation, I expect, is going to evolve and grow. So please feel free to participate and extend that conversation and circulate that blog post to people who you think have the intellectual, philosophical, and artistic interest to participate in that conversation. Jeffrey says he likes the new format. What about you guys? Do you guys like the format? Good. Thank you, Jerry. So we'll experiment. We'll keep experimenting with format and content and everything else, like we do always. We've been doing for years. And for those of you who've been reading the blog for a long time and have been part of this community, you know that this has evolved tremendously, and we have taken on some very big ideas like 1 million by 1 million because of that level of experimentation and participation from you all. So great, and I'll look forward to seeing you next week. Let's actually put up the next set of I guess we don't have the next set of roundtables. Anyway, we're here every Thursday in June, the 16th, the 23rd, and the 30th. And then we are not here the first two Thursdays in July. We're not doing roundtables in July because I'm going to be in London on the 7th, and then I'm going to be in Brussels the next week, I think, or Brussels or France, wherever. So I'm traveling, and I'm I'm not sure what exactly the infrastructure is going to be like to be able to do the roundtable. So we're going to just take a break, take a little summer vacation for all of you and for myself and for Maureen and Bharati and the team that works behind the scenes to make all this happen. And then we'll be back here on July 21st after that. So we still have 3 more roundtables to work with you in June, and then we'll be back here in July. So lots of exciting stuff going on behind the scenes, and hopefully you'll start seeing some of that as we unveil all that stuff. Meanwhile, please help us spread the word and get more people coming to these roundtables. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, VVU and Bharati and all the 1 million by 1 million ambassadors and the audience for being on the show. Bye-bye.